Sponsored by AG1. My beautiful watchers, the unbelievable has happened. E.L. James, the author of the 50 Shades of Grey softcore erotica series, has finally written a book in which there is no dubious consent between the protagonists. Yeah, I'm frightened too. I'm pretty sure this is one of the portents of the end times. However, please don't take this as an indicator that her writing has improved. In addition to there not being any consent issues, there's also not anything else. I've talked about how much pointless nothing there is in James's work every time I've reviewed it, but this book somehow outdoes its predecessors regarding nothing of note happening. BT dubs, I'm sorry this video is a few weeks after the book came out and therefore covering hecking old news by internet standards. By pure bad luck, the release coincided with me hanging out with George R. Martin, and I just couldn't bear to sully my time with him by bringing E.L. James into the equation, but I leapt on torturing myself for your amusement the second I got home, so let's do this. I remember being morbidly curious when I heard there was going to be a sequel to The Mister regarding how on earth James was going to add stakes to the story, considering all the villains had already been dealt with, what with the human traffickers being in jail and the Albanian crime boss X out of the picture. I figured she could either try resetting things and repeat the same threat to the protagonist's safety as before, or crowbar in a brand new life or death situation to add tension to the story, but making her lead seem really disaster prone. Now that it's out, I have to admit she successfully surprised me by choosing a third option, not adding any stakes to the story at all, just writing a rambling sequence of events that barely tie into one another and minor issues that pop up and resolve themselves at random intervals, sometimes without any input from the leads whatsoever. So obviously I'm not recommending my beautiful watchers read this book, therefore we're going to need a synopsis of these non-events to get everyone up to speed. Starting with a quick recap of the last book in case you've not read it, not seen my videos about it, or successfully ejected its existence from your mind zones. The two leads of the series are Maxim Trevelyan, recent inheritor of a peerage that comes with a huge old money estate, who is a proud manslut with a mild Oedipal complex. He starts the book on a mission to bang every woman in London, including Caroline, the widow of his very recently deceased older brother, and Alessia Dimarchi, an Albanian woman with synesthesia and a natural talent for the piano, who ended up in the UK after her father arranged a marriage between her and a local crime boss called Anatoly. In an attempt to escape him, she ended up in the clutches of human traffickers, whom she successfully ran away from before getting a job as Maxim's cleaner. The two met and found each other very attractive. He blew her mind with some very basic acts of kindness, then the human traffickers turned up trying to retrieve her, so he took her to his estate in Cornwall to hide, where they started fucking relentlessly. The traffickers tracked them down there because he told literally everyone where he was going, but they're immediately defeated and arrested. Anatoly then shows up, kidnaps Alessia, and drags her back to Albania. Maxim decided that the week they had spent together was more than sufficient time for them to get engaged, so followed them there and declared his love. Alessia then pretended she was pregnant with Maxim's child, inspiring Anatoly to try to shoot several people with a gun that she had secretly unloaded, so her father had thrown him out and demanded that Maxi Boy marry her instead, which he was planning to do anyway. The end. Not shockingly, the author famous for avoiding time skips like the plague starts her newest book exactly where the last left off, with a newly engaged Maxipad and Alessia at her parents' house in Albania. James continues her previous habit of taking digs at Albania throughout this section of the book, playing up how badly the plumbing works in the houses and how appalled all the British visitors are at the casual misogyny in their culture. I still have no idea what James's beef is with this country. It's possible it's just the standard British sense of superiority over all other nations, but who knows? Alessia's father, still under the misapprehension that his daughter is up the duff, organizes a little shotgun wedding for them within a day. This rush inspires some concern that he's cutting too many corners regarding the paperwork and licensing, thus endangering the legality of the union. FYI, it turns out that he didn't, and it's fine. The possibility that they're not really married comes up once or twice in the story, but amounts to absolutely nothing. This is a recurring theme throughout the book. A potential problem is set up, then proves to not be a problem. For example, they play up Alessia's immigration status potentially being endangered if the police decide to make a big stink over her having been in the country once already illegally, but they don't, and it's fine. Anyways, the day before the wedding, Anatoly shows up at the door and tries to talk Alessia into choosing him after all, which is a bold move considering he'd tried to shoot her father in the face less than 24 hours prior. Of course, considering James's track record involving her leads not considering heinous acts of assault to be a reason not to like someone, I could not be sure that this disqualified Anatoly from being the latest Jacob wannabe in yet another bloody love triangle. Fortunately, it appears that this one time James decided to stay sane, so Alessia tells Anatoly to bugger off, though he does successfully sow some seeds of doubt in her mind regarding if Maxim's family will look down on her for her humble origins. Regarding this anxiety, I just want to highlight yet another thing I hate about James's writing, namely that she has exactly one trick for establishing that a character is worried about something, and that is to have them repeat the inciting statement over and over and over again in their head. All four of her main POV characters have done this, and I don't know if this is an ADHD thing or what, but constant repetition of the same thing over and over again in a book drives me fucking spare. Anyways, this leads to her having a slight meltdown over if she's doing the right thing by marrying Maxi Fresh, but he talks to her about it like one chapter later, and she calms down. Maxim invites a friend to the wedding who brings Caroline, who invites Maxim's mother Rowena, who previously was just a slightly cold, distant mother that Maxi Boy couldn't stop describing as hot despite her age, but whose new personality is apparently all about proving Anatoly right about being cartoonishly snobby about her aristocratic son marrying his cleaner. After the wedding, the happy couple go on their honeymoon, and this section of the book is what I can only describe as a written montage. There's very short snippets that quickly jump between multiple activities and locations. It took me a minute, but I eventually realized that it's basically the opening sequence to 50 Shades Freed, the movie. Now that James has run out of Twilight books to plagiarize, she's apparently cribbing from her own movie adaptations. They get back to London, and then there's an unbearably long part of the book that's just them doing stuff. Just stuff. None of it really contributes to the larger plot. They do things like talk about moving to a bigger place and then fuck, or get some nice clothes for Alessia, then fuck. They talk to an immigration lawyer, then fuck. Eventually, the closest thing this book has to a through plot is set up when Caroline tells Maxim that his late brother Kit was seeing a genetic specialist right before his death, and none of his doctors will break confidentiality to tell him why. When questioned about this, Rowena freaks out and starts dodging his calls, leading Maxim to believe that he might have an unknown medical condition he could potentially pass on to his and Alessia's kids when they have them. Spoilers, but no, he doesn't. He's fine. It just leads to a bunch of family drama. Simultaneous to this, Alessia starts having survivor's guilt about the other prisoners who were smuggled into Britain with her, specifically a 17-year-old girl called Valeriana, and decides to make finding her her mission. Now, I don't know about you, but I absolutely think this would have made for a far better A-plot than Maxi Pad slowly finding out that every single female relative and in-law in his family was an adulterer, but alas. The quest to rescue the trafficking victims is one of the plots that just fizzles out halfway through the book, when Valeriana simply shows up at the door and reveals that she too escaped the traffickers. But of course, E.L. James is going to E.L. James, so what she chooses to focus on instead is Maxim eventually getting his snobby mother to confirm that his brother did indeed have a fatal hereditary disease, but Maxim doesn't have to worry about it because she cheated on his father and he and Kit were only half-brothers. There's a brief distraction from this plot when James decides to take a swing at writing baby's first romantic misunderstanding, and an ex-girlfriend forces a kiss on Maxim, and Alessia sees the smooch, but not him pushing her off him a second later. Like most conflicts in this book, this resolves itself almost immediately as he just explains to her what happened. There's almost a plot about Alessia befriending a rich Russian man with ties to the ex-KGB underground, but nothing really happens with this. It was just flavor text, I guess. Rowena cattily suggests that Maxim send Alessia on an etiquette training course so she can learn proper English manners, which Alessia thinks is actually a good idea as it might give her more confidence. So she does the course and does indeed learn confidence and makes a few nice friends along the way. So that's nice for her, I guess. Another short-lived subplot involved Caroline, who apparently E.L. James just cannot allow to be fully nice because she's another woman, informing Alessia that the Maxinator was an absolute man-whore until very recently, and filling her full of fresh self-doubt about their relationship. Which I guess is reasonable, but the thing is, Alicia already knew this. She was responsible for cleaning up his used condoms back when she used to work for him. I can only assume that at some point James realized that her story had no conflict in it and was desperately trying to manufacture some, but it's short-lived because it's resolved by them talking about it and him reiterating his commitment to her. What's hilarious about James's inability to write compelling conflict that lasts more than 3 pages is, as a side effect, she's accidentally written a couple with reasonably good communication skills. It makes for an incredibly boring book, but a surprisingly healthy relationship. Oh, and there's a scene involving a waitress attempting to flirt with Maxim right in front of his wife, only to get ignored, that I swear is word for word copy-pasted out of a 50 Shades book. It's amazing lack of originality here. Alessia decides to track down her long-lost great uncle who lives in London, and she does. And he's quite nice. They get on well. That's the thrilling conclusion to that subplot. Oh, and Maxim is inspired by an offhand comment from his wife to add gin making to his family estate's business ventures, and everyone thinks this is a good idea and they start looking into it. There's no major hurdles to overcome. Every few chapters someone will talk about how the gin plans are coming along and everyone's all thumbs up across the board. It's riveting. In the climax of the book, and I wish I could somehow imbue these air quotes with even more sarcasm, Maxim discovers his brother's journal and reads that Caroline was cheating on him, and this leads to finding out that his brother was actually kind of a piece of shit. In a roundabout way, this and Alessia's encouragement inspires him to forgive his mother for being an adulterous snob and make amends with her, so she apologizes to Alessia for being mean to her and trying to bribe her into leaving Maxim. Alessia gets accepted into a super prestigious musical college after admitting that she wants to be a world-famous pianist. She nails the audition and has a lot of people pulling strings for her, so there's really not any tension whatsoever regarding if she'll succeed or not. In the epilogue, it's revealed that Alessia is pregnant, which they're both really happy about, despite them both having agreed several times they wanted to wait a while before having kids. So yeah, if you had trouble following the synopsis because it's an incoherent mashup of multiple boring, stakeless events, then I have done a good job of accurately reflecting the book reading experience. And now, a quick word about this video's sponsor. Anyone who follows me and my validation-seeking behavior on social media knows that I've recently been trying my darndest to live healthily, or at least healthier than the cave-dwelling, carrion-eating goblin life I pursued for my first 35 years of existence. A huge part of this commitment has involved me making sure I get all of my vitamins. Or vitamins, as the Americans will insist upon pronouncing it. Enter AG1. You know, I've just realized I'm going to have to switch this off or you're not going to be able to see this very green product. AG1, 75 vitamins, minerals, and nutrients in a single convenient drink made entirely of whole food sourced ingredients. No more messing around shoving handfuls of pills into my mouth each morning, which is neither practical nor particularly dignified. It is just 1 scoop of powder in water and you are good to go. A small confession, I've also occasionally been mixing mine with tea, because tea addiction is the one British stereotype that is absolutely bang on the money. Actually getting the vitamins that my body has evidently been craving my entire life has made such a difference. I'm more energized, I'm focused, my stress is down, it helps keep the positive momentum going, you know? I've also been using the convenient AG1 Travel Packs to help keep my immunity health robust and ready to defend me while I travel back home to Britain or other fun places. So yeah, if that sounds good, head to my link in the video description and you'll get a free 1-year supply of AG Vitamin D3+K2 plus 5 AG1 Travel Packs with your first purchase of AG1. A few things lead me to believe that James might be setting up yet another sequel. The 2 human traffickers from the last book were mysteriously murdered in prison, and there's no resolution whatsoever to the Antoli plot. He just keeps popping up throughout the story to remind the leads that he's gonna get Alessia back, but doesn't actually do anything. But if not, and this is the end of the series, obviously I won't be upset. I don't know if I imagined it out of sheer desperation, but I think that maybe, just maybe, my biggest recurring complaint about James's writing style, i.e. her utterly superfluous micro-explaining of every action a person takes throughout the entire fucking day, might have been a little less prevalent in this book, but I mean, it certainly wasn't gone completely. James's grasp of the English language certainly hasn't improved. She's constantly doing stuff like describing coffee as hot but warming. Those words are synonymous, James. It's like saying cold but chilling. She also regurgitates the same fucking information over and over again, sometimes within a few sentences of each other. This book reads so much like a first draft, but like, she has to have editors, right? I mean, I know authors who get big enough can get the clout to demand no changes, but like, James must understand she needs the help, right? Like the last book, the POV is split between Maxim and Alessia. Like the last book, Maxim is written in the first-person present tense, while Alessia is written in the third-person present tense. And like the last book, it's a wildly uneven split, and can sometimes switch back and forth so rapidly, the change in format can be headache-inducing. Oh, and she's still doing that thing where she occasionally puts every word in a sentence on a new line for extra emphasis, despite that absolutely breaking an average reader's flow. I still, to this day, would love to know where E.L. James learned to write. It's just incredible how she manages to include every possible mistake an author can make in every one of her books. Thankfully, we don't hear quite as much about Maxim's dick this time, but there is still a fair amount. James's latest gimmick is a constant flow of a descriptor, then either the word dick or cock, including, but not limited to, enthusiastic dick, restless cock, greedy dick, impatient dick, straining cock, and straining dick. Not super important in the grand scheme of things, but I had to put the book down for a second and just rub my temples for a bit when James described Alessia holding what looks like a high-tech shower cleaning device, which a few seconds later is revealed to be a mop. I would love to say this was an intentional joke, but it really didn't come off that way. Despite all of the conflicts between Max and Alessia being resolved very quickly, usually by them just talking, it is still frustrating how much time the leads spend worrying about whether the other one really cares about them or not. Anything will set these two off. At one point, an employee makes a fucking joke about Alessia needing her own bedroom in case Maxim snores too much, and Alessia immediately jumps to, oh no, does Maxim want us to have separate bedrooms? Like, lass, Maxim's not even in the room right now. He comes in like a minute later and confirms that no, he does not want them to have separate bedrooms. There was no reason for her to jump straight to this conclusion. Considering this happened all the way through the 50 Shades series too, it's like James thinks it's not true romance unless it's between two people who are unbelievably insecure. A big deal is also made out of Maxim and Alessia wanting to have a second wedding in the UK for Maxim's extended family and friends, but there are concerns about the legality of marrying the same person twice, as if having a second ceremony or reception without signing a new wedding document isn't super common and very normal. I guess James just has a thing for women cooking breakfast while dancing to music, as she's written it into every single book she's ever published. I mean, it's not a problem as such, it's just repetitive. Alessia is shocked that Maxim is okay with having sex with her while she's on her period, and isn't appalled and disgusted by the very fact that she's having one, which I assume was another dig at Albania being filled with backwards savages, but was also an unpleasant reminder that in the last book someone referred to this as surfing the crimson tide. James is still frustratingly inconsistent regarding Alessia's grasp of English. She basically only stumbles over words when James remembers that's supposed to be her thing, and her internal thoughts never do this, which I guess is because she's thinking in Albanian, but as it's written in English, it's still a jarring juxtaposition. At one point in this book, Maxim uses the term unman me to mean make him come, which is weird on its own, but doubly so because he used this exact same phrase to mean make him cry in the Mister. I cannot express how much I do not want to know why James believes that these two things are interchangeable. There's a brief sex scene in this that takes place in the sea, which I know isn't unheard of in real life, but considering that her characters have also been known to get it on in hot tubs and had various creams and chocolates smeared all over their genitals, I cannot help but wonder about how incredibly robust the pH balance must be in every woman written by E.L. James that none of them have ever suffered any consequences from this. There's a scene which is meant to be funny because Alessia doesn't know how to use a PlayStation controller, but ends up being funny because James gets the term console and controller mixed up and clearly doesn't know that there's been a PS5 for a few years now. In one confusing moment, Alessia claims to herself that she is not jealous, it's just that she doesn't trust Caroline or her husband to be alone together, which James, what do you think jealousy is? Young Bleriana stays the night after she reveals that she doesn't need rescuing, and apparently decides that she feels safer getting into bed with Alessia and Maxim in the middle of the night, leading to a scene where Maxim wakes up with a boner and starts initiating sex before realizing there's a minor in the bed with them, which I think was supposed to be cute and funny, but I found just unbelievably uncomfortable. So, all in all, this is by far the best E.L. James book I've ever read. I know that sounds like an incredible statement, but remember, it's akin to saying, of all the times I've been repeatedly stabbed in the crotch with a rusty trident, this is the least painful. All of her usual writing incompetencies were there, but at least I wasn't grinding my teeth over the glorification of abusive behavior or manipulation. I will take boring over harrowing any day. It's kind of sad, really. Like I said before, this book is apparently what James is capable of when she doesn't have a new Stephanie Meyer novel to copy, and there's just nothing there. There is no substance to this book whatsoever. What tiny scraps of plot exist are so cliche. Like, in the year of our Lord 2023, she really tried to write a story involving an aristocratic family not wanting a noble to marry a commoner. She really has so few original ideas, she's trying to rip off children's fairy tales with added cringy sex scenes. The Mister was by far James's worst selling book, but I would bet serious money that this one's gonna take that title. People like awful, they like controversial, they simply do not care about dull. Thank you for joining me, my beautiful watchers. Don't forget that likes, comments, and new subscribers are the lifeblood that all YouTube channels rely on. If you crave more Dom-related content, be sure to check out my Patreon page for exclusive videos, and take care of yourselves out there. Much love and appreciation to my patrons of honor, Shelby Holtz, April Mack, and Curtis Charles Jr. Shout out to Ilnej for the credits music, check out his channel for more parody and original songs, and a huge thank you to this video's editor, Sophia Ricciardi. Links to her work in the video description. Including Caroline. Stay away from Caroline, Maxim, you sick pervert. Whom she successfully ran away from before getting fucking ass fuck. Don't rub your cheek on the tripod because you moved Dominique's camera. Yeah. Usually it's your brother Sateri interrupting filming, but today it's the little voidling, huh?